Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the Buddhist Biohacker. Welcome to everybody who's joining in on the live on YouTube, youtube.com/Buddhist Biohacker. If you are joining in the live, we have a live chat, and I will be looking at that. So if questions, comments, please feel free to share in that live chat. And don't forget to click subscribe on the channel so you can get tuned in for any of our podcasts that are going live from here on out. And to everybody who's listening on iTunes and Spotify, welcome. And I hope you're driving safe or safe wherever you are listening to this replay. And I'm really excited for today's topic. And I guess I should say, my name is Lisa Gunshore. I'm your host always for Buddhist Biohacker. And I have my dearest, I don't even know what to call you. You're like a colleague and a sister and a friend and a mom and all these things to me, Tayria Ward. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for inviting me. I feel like it's going to be really exciting to go into this conversation together.
Yeah, this is so good. And you spoke a few weeks ago about the eagle and the condor prophecy, and it was just incredible and so well received. And so I'm really excited because I think a lot of those folks are going to be listening in again to hear what you have to say. And I can't wait to talk about this, just doing the prep work and reading through your work to talk about this today. I was like fired up. To talk about this today because I'm like, oh, it's near and dear to my heart. And so for everybody who's joining on the live, welcome. I see a lot of you guys joining in, so welcome. Again, you guys can chat and comment in there. So enough of all that. I'll share your comments and questions as we go through if you have any. But today we're talking about machine cosmology. And I have to be honest, I didn't think really I knew that much about it. And so reading about the topic, I was like, whoa, like this is a big thing right now, especially in what's happening. So I want to start out first, Tayria, with having you share a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll dig into the topic.
Okay. I have a Ph.D. in depth psychology. So I do a lot of work with dreams. I studied depth psychology, Jung's psychology, mostly because of my interest in dreams. I'd been working with people's dreams for 20 some years before I ever even heard of Jung. So once I got on board with his work and Freud's work with dreams, I decided in midlife to go back for my doctorate. So that is the main sort of focus in a certain way of the work I do. My doctoral dissertation was called Reawakening Indigenous Sensibilities in the Western Psyche. So I've had a deep study for the last 25 years probably of indigenous ways of knowing and thinking and being and their perceptions and our own indigenous nature. And that has a lot to do with dreaming and dream time. So those are my focus. I have been, I've worn many hats. I was an interfaith minister for 20 years. I was then a professor at the undergraduate and graduate levels. Then I moved to North Carolina from Los Angeles and started a retreat center where I led vision quests and did dreaming retreats and getting people back into the mind of nature. And now I live in Asheville. I have a private practice doing dream analysis with private clients on Zoom or by phone or in person. And then I do a lot of teaching online. So I've been teaching courses online for the last 2 years, mostly. So it's a lot of different things that I'm doing right now, but mostly around the indigenous work and the dreamtime work.
Yeah, which I'm passionate about also. So and you have so many offerings right now. So everybody who's listening, check out her links in the bio when they post here, because there's so many great things you're doing right now, all these different summits and classes. And I was looking at all of the different webinars and I'm like, I don't know which one to listen to first. So
there's more to come. There's a lot in the pipeline too. So yeah.
There really is. And so we're going to talk today about machine cosmology. So I want to give you the opportunity to really kind of share what that is for everybody who's listening and really kind of frame it up, and then we'll kind of dig into the juicy parts of it.
All right. Okay. Because I do dream analysis, I have been hearing some dreams lately that are talking a lot about this work with machines. and I'm going to share with you a couple of the dreams that I've received. But the dreams are the ones that told me we got to start talking about this. So the last dream symposium, yeah, we do a monthly dream symposium, which people can look at my website on the dream symposium page and register for that, and you'll find out when it is. You can come to these dream symposiums that we have monthly. They're free, where we listen to the dreams of people all over the world. So the last dream symposium, these dreams came up about the machine. I'll tell you the dream, that sort of machine identification. And so that's what made me go back into my dissertation and pull out this whole piece I had done when I was writing it about humans versus machines. And I always like to hold up the book. This is a book that I was using back then. So I think this was published in the 80s or 90s. I'm not exactly sure. This is Matthew Fox and Rupert Sheldrake. And Rupert Sheldrake is a scientist. Matthew Fox is a cosmologist. He's a theologian and many things.
Oh, that's awesome. And just for everybody listening, this book will be in the show notes, so you'll know exactly what book to get if you're listening in.
Yeah, if you're interested, The Physics of Angels. But it was in that book that I first learned about the term machine cosmology. And so what this refers to is as we know, a cosmology is a description of the universe, how it is, what it is, how it works, and all the things about the universe. And our cosmological perspective creates how we become, who we become, how we create the world, how we interact with the world, how we conceive of the world. So in earlier eras, the cosmology of earlier peoples tended to be that the universe was a living system and that everything in it was alive, everything in it had a spirit, a soul, a voice, an importance, that the interconnectedness of all things was just understood, and that the rights of all species, all creatures, all plants, everything had rights. And that all were alive and that we were interdependent. So these were the earlier cosmologies. So around the 17th century, when along came, the scientific revolution, basically, with Rene Descartes as a philosopher and Isaac Newton and his physics, suddenly the universe came to be conceived as soulless, that it was basically a machine, that it's all run by these mathematical urgencies, that it's pure math and science that makes everything in the universe go around. Even in our bodies, the heart was conceived not as an organ of perception or a brain or an intelligent aspect of our human nature, but it's just a pump. It's just pumping blood through the body. It's not. So everything about us started to be conceived as mechanical. That was a mechanized universe. And basically, as many use the term, it disenchanted the universe. There was no more talking to the river or understanding the call of the bird in that other way. I mean, ornithology was, there were certain things that people were doing, but basically the separateness of humans became the important ones who had consciousness and everything else did not. And so that began, and then, the dualism of the Cartesian sort of method of creating the mechanics, and then the soul was something else. It was something different. It was not, our bodies were not ensouled. The soul was some other aspect. And so we come like 400 years later, and here we are, and our universe is just run by machines. Everything is run by machines. As I was sort of waking up to this, and I can say more about what started waking me up, I just realized if my refrigerator broke, or if my computer wasn't working, or the phone wasn't working, or the answering machine wasn't picking up messages, or anything with the machines, if that wasn't working, I wasn't working. My life wasn't working. I didn't know how to be. I would just have these anxiety attacks based on how the machines were doing. I can remember, I think many of us, my age at least, remember the time when we used to pick up the phone and call somebody and there was a human there. Now you can't find a human anywhere. It's all, you go through a network of machines. And if you get a human, you're lucky. And if you get a human, often the human is just reading what the machines say to you anyway. It's a whole different world. And it's taking away our most basic instincts as humans. Those instincts, those reasonings, those logics of the heart and of our cellular nature get silenced because they don't interact well with the machine cosmology. I'm going to read a couple of dreams here that will help you to see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
One of them is from a friend of mine. This was back when I was writing my dissertation. So this was in the early 90s, actually, that she gave me this dream. And then I have another one that was a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, just dreamed a couple of weeks ago. They're very similar. So this friend who had been living in Africa, she's from the East Coast, but she'd been living in Africa for a couple of years. And I think that living in that place where the machine cosmology had not gone so deep into the psychic structure of how things are there or into the dream time there. So she came back after a couple of years. And this is like one of the first nights she had this dream. I am in some unknown location. It feels like a laboratory or some place that is sterile. Lots of metal or maybe tile in the room. Under glass covers, I see a whole range of dishes that have been prepared. There is a lot of blood, and I can see in the periphery of my vision. This whole scene is pretty gross, really. I realize suddenly that what I am looking at are dishes made of human parts. There is something with kidney and another with brain parts. But these are prepared as gourmet dishes. One dish is being called something like human kidney a la orange. The whole thing is macabre and bizarre. And then I realized that the butchering of humans and subsequent preparation of the dishes have been done by these human-looking machines. Somehow it is easier to accept that machines did this. I felt I would be more offended if other humans had done it. Still, the whole thing is so weird, but I can't stop looking. Then I remember that my children are with me and I start to worry about how this scene is going to affect them. I think it is going to cause them nightmares. I was left with an eerie, surreal feeling that lasted for days after the dream. And when she told me this dream, I was just starting to wake up to this machine cosmology and how I experience it at a cellular level. It's like the way that we conceive of the world goes into our DNA and our genes, and trying to wake up from it can hurt and disturb us at a cellular level. And she sent me this dream and I could see it. It felt like, to me, like a candid photograph of our inner cosmology, that our humanity is being served up as dissected, and we're losing our sense of humanity because these machine parts are taking over now. And it seems like the height of sophistication now to be in this mechanized universe the way it is. And that's how it was in the dream. It's like serving up our humanity was very sophisticated. And then,
when I read through that dream, it was like so intense and potent. And then hearing you read it again, it's like, oh, it's potent.
Dreams don't lie. That's the thing. It feels like a metaphor on the one hand, and it is. And on another hand, on another level, it's just telling us what's happening. Mm-hmm. I feel like all these dystopian, some of them are dystopian, some of them are just considered fun. These movies about robots taking over the world. I think that's actually what's happening. It seems like science fiction, but at some level, it's actually true that the humans are less necessary and less important, and our humanity itself feels less necessary or important or even valuable. It's like when you're in this machine cosmology, your emotions don't even fit there. It's like you don't even get to have an opinion about what the machines are doing.
Yeah. Well, and, in this time, like we're with all of us safe at home, shelter in place, social isolation, whatever you want to call it, through this quarantine time, this is the only way to communicate, like how we're communicating right now. I mean, and I've had a lot of thoughts. One thought was, should I put a landline back in my house and connect via telephone? What happens if this shuts down? Like, what happens if we lose internet? Like, how do we do our work? What's next in that? And I'm just curious your thoughts as we're talking about machines taking over. And I think we are really experiencing that right now because it's the only way for us to even connect. It's become our ability to socialize, and we're not even, there's the human touch and experience is not there.
Right. I thank God for it, right? We're having this conversation, we're connecting with each other. The sort of global brain is like hearing people all over the world getting together in these ways. So it's certainly to be respected for what it offers us. But it's also, I think, like you're saying, what if it all shuts down? Then what?
Yeah.
And I think that is something we need to discover, the sort of dual aspect of the benefits of it versus how identified we become with it, and what are we really connected to, and do we know how really to listen to our deepest humanity, and which is connected to every other living thing on the earth.
Yep, agreed. And it's reminding me, like right now in this moment, I'm like, oh yeah, I did a whole meditation in the summit back in April that was how to connect in with the grid. It was called Meet Me in Meditation. It's just popping in my mind right now. That was one of the practices that my spirit guides said to do, was to meet in meditation. If things shut down, or even if you feel like this technological connection is too much or whatever, to go connect to the crystalline grid around the planet. There's several grids around and in the planet to be able to connect with each other in that very telepathic way, which I'm curious, with your Indigenous background, like what about that, or what your thoughts are about that, of us being able to connect telepathically versus the machine. I don't know.
Well, I would say yesterday I was on the machine a lot. And then by the end of the day, late in the afternoon, I just took a long walk and it started raining and it was just glorious. I was just walking. It was, thank goodness, a little warm enough that I wasn't freezing to death, but I was a long way. I had a couple miles to go in the rain. And then I came home and I just sat on my porch for about 3 hours. I just looked at the colors, I smelled the smells, I watched the birds and the squirrels and the turkeys that go up the street. And I just stayed outside, and I couldn't, I had things I needed to do that required reconnecting with the machine, that required maybe listening to the news, and that sort of thing. And I couldn't pull myself away from just the natural world and the way it was filling up my senses. And I think that those kind of things, as an antidote, or as a, maybe antidote's the wrong word, but just at least something that we do also, alongside of, how we're benefiting ourselves and our work in the world and our communication with one another through these machines, but really just get away from them, shut it all down, and be as much as you can in the natural world, even if it's simply right outside your door, even if you can't get very far away. It's, for most of us, maybe some people living in apartments can't find it, but there's always air, there's sky. Whatever you can do to get in touch with that and just shut the rest of it down for a bit, so that we come to understand who we actually are. One of my favorite quotes that I have on my refrigerator, and I think I even have it on my email signature, is James Audubon's, "If the bird and the book disagree, always believe the bird."
I love that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like if your intellectual thinking is sort of disagreeing with what you just know in this direct contact with the earth, believe this. Let the rest of that sort of play itself out, but don't give it as much importance as this just sort of simple connection to bird song and wind. So even last night, as I was sitting and watching the news, finally, I had a window open and the wind came up and just stirred everything up in the room. And I felt like, oh, I said, welcome, thank you, thank you for being here. It's like really let in our sensory, and the wind just came up when I said that. It's amazing. I wish I could show you outside. It wasn't there,
Oh,
but
I love it.
it's so
Oh,
responsive. I mean, that is not an accident in my mind at all.
not at all.
Yeah, I wish I could show you.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
so it's a matter of balancing this. But back to the machine cosmology. Let me just give you this other colleague's dream.
Yeah, I want to hear that.
Other thoughts about this too. This is my friend Jocelyn Mercado. She had this dream a couple of weeks ago. She said, I'm in a place, it's very modern, shiny gray walls. She said it's like a farmer's market where all these booths, and she goes to this booth and she said each of them have really sharp edges. And she's in one stall or a section and she says, I'm trying to charge. And then she says, myself or my phone? She said, I couldn't even tell the difference. She had to plug in and charge herself or her phone. And then she went to another booth and had to get some surgery. And it was a vertical cut on the lower right side of her back. And there was a machine that was going to do it. Now, I thought this was interesting based on this dream of my friend from 20 years ago about the machines that were doing the surgery on these humans. And here she has a machine that's going to do this surgery on her. And it's going to be, I think, in the kidney area. It's the lower right side of the back. Is that right? Is that where the kidneys are?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this other one was about the kidneys too. So there's something for us to consider. What is the dream time telling us here? These dreams are 20 years apart, two different people, very similar.
Interesting.
And she says that ultimately it was all the machines that were going to do all the surgery, and she couldn't tell the difference between herself and the machine. It was an alarming dream for her, of course.
Yeah.
It took me right back to this whole piece and just resurrecting. It felt like the dream time is saying, let's pay attention to what has happened to us at a cellular level since the scientific revolution. And Brian Swim is a scientist who I just adore. And I was listening to his tape series called Canticle to the Cosmos. I just found out you can get it on Audible.
Oh, cool.
Everybody can listen to it. Brian Swim, SWIMME, and it's Canticle to the Cosmos. And I had the old-fashioned cassette tapes, and I wish I could upgrade it. And I just found it's on Audible, so I would say anybody to listen to that. But one of the things that he was saying is that we have to realize the power of our choice. He said, we are choosing as a species right now what we're going to become. He mentioned that how horses were formed. He said horses lived in the forest. And then at some point they made the choice that they wanted to run when they were challenged by a predator. And so that moved them out into the fields, and that developed a whole different bone structure. It's like what became horse was that when they chose to not live in the forest anymore, but to go out into the plains and to run. And he said that's what created their structure. And then he named how bison and some of these other species were formed gradually because of choices they made. And he said, we humans now are making the choice. Are we going to become these machines, or are we going to reclaim our humanity? And he talked about our religion of consumerism. He said children, by the time they're in first grade, have listened to more ads than time spent in most high school classrooms. And that's all just about the self becomes this thing that you manufacture through, I wear this t-shirt, I wear these shoes, I carry this purse, I do that thing, I got this makeup. It's like all of that is the manufacturing of the self that becomes this sort of machine kind of person that you've patched together in parts. that has sometimes very little to do with tuning into your own nature, your own deep heart, your own deep soul. You know what? It's just how to sort of fit into this manufactured world that we live in, and that's where narcissism comes in. And I quoted Alexander Lowen. He wrote a book called Narcissism, A Denial of the True Self. And that's kind of talking about this manufactured self that denies the true self. The true self is inconvenient to, you know, what you want to create when you're trying to patch it together with all these styles and options. So, you know, that goes again into the Copernican revolution, when Copernicus realized that the earth traveled around the sun, not the other way, not the sun traveling around the earth. You know, that was a big revolution. But I feel like that hasn't happened in the psyche yet. It's like we still think that all the universe travels around the self. It's like, it's as backwards as thinking the sun travels around the earth instead of the other way around. But we still think the self is the important thing that we have manufactured and put together, and everything else should be in service to it instead of the other way around.
Before we dig in, I want to dig into this narcissist stuff.
Please.
But before we do, I want to share about the kidneys. So, interesting note is in Ayurveda, you know, in the science of longevity, the kidneys are actually the primary driver of your adrenal system and your hormone system. And kidneys are part of cleansing the blood of toxins. And it's interesting when you're talking about that, because I'm thinking, you know, there's a lot of processing going on with our food and our environment that we're having to process out through those kidneys. And with most of my patients, I'm actually supporting kidneys to manage not only hormones, but to manage energy. You know, to manage adrenal fatigue, that it's really less about supporting the adrenals and more about supporting the kidney function. So when you're talking about these dreams, connecting with the kidney energy, and I think of the toxicity and how hard our kidneys have to work in this day and age, is just an interesting, like there's something there to all of that. It's really fascinating to me, because it's so important to cleanse your blood and to cleanse your system.
That, I love hearing you say that, and it makes me think of you know, what are our sort of psychological and spiritual kidneys, you know, that do what you're saying, that sort of process out the toxins of, you know, what we're taking in psychologically and spiritually that may be toxic to our actual nature, you know, and so we have, so all of that, you know, the physical kidneys, as well as they're a metaphor for what we are at other levels as well. So that's really good. I think this deserves a lot of sort of consideration for all of us to see what that actually is telling us.
I feel a collaborative blog post. I think that'd be interesting for you and I to dig in on both sides of the physical functions and the science of Ayurveda, and, you know, the indigenous functions in the dream, and what you're talking about, the psychological kidneys. I mean, there's something to all of that, because it's that process of purification. And that's one of our primary, and the kidneys is 2 a.m. You wake up at 2 a.m. That's your kidneys. That's part of that.
Interesting.
Yes. And so when you think of those 2 a.m., you know, liver, I think, is 3 a.m. And I may be getting them mixed up, but I don't think so. But, you know, when you're waking up at those certain hours, it's telling you what detoxification systems are disturbed.
That is so interesting. You know, it's like, that's when the body is actually telling us what's going on. That's when we wake up to our dreams too. And see, these dreams, it's just amazing. People, listen to your dreams. The dreams are telling us what's really going on. You know, the mind can become confused in this consensual reality that we've constructed and lose track of what's true, what's original, what's real. Jung used to talk about the 2 million-year-old person inside of all of us. And he would say, go into the dream, you know, when you go to bed, ask the 2 million-year-old person inside of you to comment on your life, because that archaic part that knows who we are and why we arrived here on this planet and what we are intentioned to do here and how we're connected to the stars and everything else, that part, invite it to comment on our current modernity and life embedded in this system that just in the last 500 years, as I talked about in the eagle and condor prophecy, the ancient prophets said that those 500 years starting in 1400 all through this period that we're talking about were going to be critical as to whether we were going to survive as a species or not. And it's time to wake up and make that decision. Will we survive? And it's going to take a whole shift in brain chemistry, basically. It's going to take a shift in our genetic sort of attributes, and we can shift that. We can shift all of that by the efforts that we make to think new thoughts, to allow ourselves to deconstruct the world that we have created internally in order to live in the next sort of, and the deepest and truest and most ancient, as well as the next sort of phase of our evolution and development here that we're working toward. Bring the good out of all these last 500 years, not throw the baby out with the bath, certainly, but, but allow ourselves to understand where we have limited ourselves to it rather than expanding ourselves through it. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. I want to get into this narcissist topic because your work, there was a quote in your work where you said narcissists can be identified by their lack of humanness. And I found a couple quotes from the Dalai Lama because I can't help it. And I wanted to share these quotes and then we can talk a little bit about this. So the Dalai Lama said, people were created to be loved. Things were created to be used. The reason the world is in chaos is because things are loved and people are used. And then he also said, interdependence is a fundamental law of nature. Even tiny insects survive by cooperating with each other. Our own survival is so dependent on the help of others that a need for love lies at the very core of our existence.
That's so beautiful. Oh, I love how that you brought that right in there. That is so powerful.
Oh, I just heard, I'm reading your work and I was like, oh, this is like exactly what you're talking exactly what His Holiness is talking about, which is this need to understand the nature of the mind, the science of the mind, and the interdependent reality that we exist in. And you talk about that in there. And I just want to talk about this idea of this narcissistic psychology and how that is in line with this machine cosmology.
Yeah, the quote that you said was Alexander Lowen, not my own words, but he said they can be a narcissist or identified by their lack of humanity. And that would be like these machine people doing these surgeries in the dreams. And to whatever extent we are machine people, it's like we've lost track of humanity. And if you've ever had any relationship with somebody who is seriously narcissistic, even pathologically narcissistic, you find that your humanity, that they can treat you as if you were a thing, not a human, as if you don't have feelings or shouldn't have feelings, or that and I think right now we have some pathological narcissism at the highest levels of functioning in our nation, and that's to I think show us who we are. It's not that it's not a reflection of what we've become, and that's how we got here. And I think originally there was this idea of the self that got separated out from the web of life, that it got way out of control, like a cancer cell, just keeps getting way out of control. I think that idea of the self, that narcissistic idea of the self, became like a virus or a cancer in our own thinking apparatus. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry that I didn't.
It's okay. I read an article recently that talked about like being prepared for the ultimate gaslighting after this quarantine is over, and how are we going to, be told that, this was all sort of our own fantasy and that everything's okay, and that we're back to normal. And I was trying to find the quote and I can't find it now. I can't find the article, but it was a great article just about this concept of, um, being told that we don't have feelings, don't have emotions, and going into this quarantine, it was talking about, that there's going to be this process of trying to get us to disconnect from the emotional experiences we're having during this time and kind of forget about them and move on.
Yeah, I saw that article and it was well said. It was well done. People could probably Google it, the ultimate gaslighting out of this situation. But
Yeah.
I'm sure that it's true. It's as soon as we're able to start to go back to what's considered normal, which is really an abnormal way of life, or it wouldn't have been killing us. It's been killing us. So I'm sure that people are going to try to patch it together for, some of them well-intentioned. It's just like how to get their comfort level back with,
Yeah.
being present to their family's needs, economic and whatever, social. But I think the worst thing we could do is not change now. And we don't even know what we're becoming. We just need to really be with the ambiguity of it right now and find a comfort level with the uncertainty of it right now and listen deeply to our dreams, listen to each other, to the truthfulness that we can share with one another, to listen to the body of the earth, to the stars, to our own genetic makeup. Listen deeply, and don't try to patch it together too soon. Don't try to go back, certainly, and don't try to even decide where we're going with this. We just need to let ourselves emerge. It's like a little seed that's in the earth, it's just growing. We just have to let that seed in us just emerge and see what it's going to become.
Yeah. And this reminds me of two things. One is, I don't like this whole let's get back to normal. I think we're that going back, we don't want to go backwards. I think it's going forward into a new normal. And it reminds me, so I was telling you before we got on here that I was reading your dissertation, and then all of a sudden I saw something that wasn't there that was there, and it was all this same information, and it was I was like, wait a minute. But the concept and what I saw and what I think I heard telepathically from you was we need to silence the noise so that we can connect to our human nature. And I wonder, for a lot of us, I think in this one vortex, in this one reality, that's exactly what's happening. It's this like everything, all the distractions were shut down. In fact, my husband and I were just talking yesterday, just not commuting, like simply not commuting. My husband has pushed his music. He's a musician. He has pushed his music probably 10 years forward in a month because he had the time to invest in things that he had not been able. He thought, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. And so in some ways, there's this reality, this vortex of now that there's all these distractions are removed, I'm able to do this work I came here to do. And then I think there's this whole other reality vortex that's still very much distracting themselves and connecting in with this machine energy. And so I just wonder what your thoughts are on not just the different realities, but about that silencing everything to be able to connect with ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, when you're saying that, I'm remembering just the place I went to last night that was, after I got back soaking wet from my walk and just sat out on the porch for 3 hours because I knew not to come in and gear up all the thinking machine, even just thought machine, just be there. It's like to be really with the, I know you and I had a conversation recently talking about the DNA as this really sophisticated technology that we've basically shut down our own potentials by deferring the power to the machines, and that our own DNA is capable of doing way more than these computers can do, way more than any of our technologies can do. Our external technologies can do, but we have to listen to our own genetic sort of makeup and imperatives. And by externalizing all that, which we have done through the machine cosmology, externalized it, then we silenced our own voices, our own instincts, our own inner powers that have been there all along and are ready to be reactivated. So I think it's a matter of shutting down somehow the rational mind and allowing the sort of mythic dream thinking mind to emerge with greater volume inside. And that's, you know, that's the mind that hears through the different senses. You know, we hear with our cells as well as our ears or brain. So listening at a whole different level to who we are and what we're capable of. So yeah, I think deep, 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 powerful listening is what, you know, we're required to do now. And that doesn't happen in a hurry. It happens when we slow it down, when we allow ourselves the space. I love that your husband is taking the time from being on the highway to making music. I mean, what a beautiful rechanneling of creative energy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you think of like the time, like get like both of us, you know, getting kids to and from school, going to and from, you know, even going to and from, I worked from home, so my life didn't change that much, but I taught and I coached preschool gymnastics and taught yoga and things. And so just driving back and forth to doing those things and driving the kids to and from school and my husband going to and from work, like it's amazing how much space is here that wasn't there before. But it's also amazing, you know, my husband's comment was, we thought we didn't have space to do these things. Like we thought, oh, this project's going to take too long, or, oh, I don't have time to, you know, get online 2 or 3 times a week and do podcasts because I have all these things, when really like you could just do it. And so it's been kind of an interesting experiment, I'm sure, for a lot of people, which is, yes, boundaries have been removed and some of those time sucks may come back, you know, like commuting and things. But at the end of the day, like, what's really holding you back from living your soul purpose? Which goes into what you talk about in your dissertation about we create our life. You know, we create our life. And I tell everyone that I'm not a fatalist. When I read cards, when I do a psychic reading, it's truly about where you're headed. So you can see if you're creating what you want. It is not about this is for sure going to happen no matter what. And so, you know, you talk about that. And so, you know, I'd like to talk about that and get your thoughts on that whole idea of it's us that creates our reality.
Right. I'm just going to share with you, based on, since you mentioned that, this is a dream that I wrote about in the piece that you read. And it was a dream that I had years ago. But in the dream, I'm in a hospital setting. There is a discussion among several doctors about a discovery of chemicals in the brain that produce a limited vision of the self, that create a notion saying the self of a person is the only important or real thing, and that the universe revolves around that self. Like I was saying about the Copernican revolution, the universe revolves around that self and nothing else matters but the self. The discovery is being made that a shift in brain chemistry can resolve this illusion so that a vaster, broader awareness of the universe can be experienced. And, you know, David Bohm, who's a quantum physicist, also talked about how the chemistry in the brain locks in our thinking. And it's a matter of shifting the chemistry, even the chemistry in the brain. He said that like a familiar thought, like the universe is a machine, or I am this, or I believe that, or, you know, my family does this, or, you know, whatever we hold as an absolute sort of reality for ourselves, it becomes a familiar thought. So when we think it, it creates endorphins, which is like morphine. It's just, it's familiar. And so if we try to deconstruct that thought, maybe I'm not this, maybe I can be that, maybe I am not weak and powerless. It can be even our even our most self-destructive thoughts that are familiar. So they create endorphins because maybe our first grade teacher always told us we were stupid. And so we believe we're stupid, and that creates endorphins. If somebody tells you you're smart, you don't even know how to digest that, and so it reduces the endorphins in the brain, creates this anxiety. So we have to go through the anxiety of changing even our brain chemistry and our brain function in order to allow for the new meanings to come, which is why I think we need to understand that even as we're becoming more powerful, more consistent with who we are at a deep level, it's going to be like getting over an addiction, because we become addicted to the old familiar thinking. And so the old familiar thoughts, even as destructive or as self-limiting as they are producing those endorphins, and to get through it together with each other, we support each other like you would getting over an addiction, just allowing the endorphins to drop and getting yourself through the anxiety so you can enter the next stage of recovery from the old meanings and the old paradigm, the old emotions. But it's going to be work, it just doesn't happen without doing the work of it. So what was your initial question?
I don't even know. I don't know, but you talk about the work, and I think, what are some tools to give the listener to do some of this work? I made a couple notes. One was the deep listening piece. So
Mhm.
I think, if you can share if there's ways that folks can practice deep listening, but also the dream work. I've kept dream journals for years. I'm a lucid dreamer, have been my whole life. I've been really lucky that way. So I'm conscious most of the night. I mean, I hours and hours and hours I'm doing things and lucid. And so but I also know, like, my husband, for example, isn't all the time. So his dreams have been coming back, and he's been working on that. And so, what are some tools for listening and the dream work that can help us connect?
When you ask that, I would say definitely your dreams, really learning how to understand the language of the dreams. And it's metaphoric language. It's not literal. If your dream tells you that you're dying or somebody's dying, it's not literal. It means there's an old attitude toward yourself or something that's dying. So just be sure not to take your dreams literally. They're speaking in a symbolic language. But the other thing is, I think one of the most helpful questions in terms of going through the sort of change in brain chemistry or change in self-identification and all the changes is like, when everything just feels wrong, ask yourself what's right about what's wrong. And what's right about this? It's clear what's wrong about it, what feels wrong about it, what looks wrong about it. But what's right about this? And that can shift your brain chemistry. That can shift your whole way of thinking. It's like, like this whole situation we're in right now feels very wrong. It's like people can't even see their most cherished loved ones. We can't travel to each other. We can't, businesses. But what's right about this? It's not to deny or not be present to what is wrong with it, but it's what's right about it. And I think any situation in your life, if somebody, hurts or upsets you in a certain way, say, what's right about this situation? What is it that it's, has some wisdom to impart? So it's just shifting our thinking and allowing ourselves to shift our thinking. And that's what this dream is saying, that the whole universe can change if we just shift our thinking. The whole universe, all of our perception can change. I had a dream just about a week ago where in the dream, a man was trying to decide if he was a noun or a verb. And if he was a noun, the whole universe, I could see in the dream, the whole universe was this way. If he was a verb, the whole universe was that way. It just shifted everything about his reality. And he was trying to figure out which reality was real or which one was true. And to me, the noun is like the machine. And the verb is like this evolving universe.
Mhm.
But they both have their place. It's like in physics, there's energy and matter, so, and they're both the same thing. They're a wave or a particle, it's like, depends on how you look at it, whether you see a wave or whether you see a particle, but they're both the same thing. So it's like understanding that we're verbs as well as nouns, and nouns as well as verbs, that getting the opposites together somehow. So, it just work on your concepts, work on your thinking, work on your dreams. Try to find a comfort level with the discomfort of it. It's like, okay, all this uncertainty is so uncomfortable. And how can I what's right about that? What's right about the discomfort? What is that going to help me learn how to change or do, because I've developed a certain ability to be with uncertainty and with the discomfort, even with the pain. And what's right about it, so, and that takes attention.
Yeah.
And it takes patience. It takes resilience and courage and energy, courage, a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And we need each other, to support each other through the processes. Talk it through with your loved ones if you can. Sometimes that's not easily done, but as best you can, like support your friends as they're going through the uncertainties, and be bold enough to share your own uncertainties, that make us look weak, maybe in our ego, but strong in our soul. So
I love that. I love that. I think most of my strength and courage has come from all the darkness that you have to face, and that part brings being strong enough to face it makes you realize you're strong enough to face anything, really.
right. You learn things in those dark nights of the soul that you can't learn any other way.
Yep. Well, and they're saying, I mean, that's what we're going through as a globe right now, is our dark night of the soul. And interesting side note is the full moon is Thursday. It's kind of tomorrow night into Thursday. And it's called the truth moon.
Oh,
And it's about revealing your truth. And there's actually a kite formation astrologically called the truth diamond, I think is what it's called, at the end of the month. I think I got my info here. Yeah. So this kite formation is like this truth diamond at the end of the month. And the way that the planets are lined up, it's going to force your truth to be revealed. And the question is, can you accept your truth when it's revealed to you? And this is going to impact our globe. And so I imagine we're going to see this on a global scale as well as an individual scale, but it's revealing the truth. And then it's a matter of, can you handle the truth? And are you going to accept the truth and create a new future based on that truth or not? So this is a really important time astrologically to listen to this podcast and to think about what your personal truth is and what you're creating. And are you creating from a space of interdependence? Are you creating, from a narcissist reality? Like, where are you at with that? Because it's going to be revealed 28th and 29th of May is this formation. So
wow. So we all need to sort of really open our hearts to it. I'm glad you're just flagging it. So
yeah, well, and your advice, I wrote this note down and I'll put it in my social media post today, but you had said, ask the 2 million-year-old person. And I think, wow, what do we do May 28th and 29th during this truth kite? What if we're asking that 2 million-year-old person to reveal our truth and our dreams and what comes from that?
I think that's an excellent idea. Maybe everybody that's listening, if we can all remember, make a note to ourselves right now that to ask the 2 million-year-old person inside of us to speak with us, to show up in whatever ways that the dream imagery can offer something to us. And dreams aren't always just dreams of the night. The dream comes through events. It comes through thoughts, memories, reflections, uh, fleeting ideas, all those are part of the dream time. So even if you don't dream the night dream, there, the dreaming mind is always ready to receive, and always ready to impart a deeper wisdom. So,
Yeah. Well, and
yeah,
for everybody listening, comment whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on social media or the podcast or whatever, but we'd love to hear. I think it'd be awesome if people share their dreams with you and us and say what comes up for them this month. And after having this conversation too and listening to it, I'd be curious what comes from that, you know?
yeah. Let me look on my calendar right here. The next Dream Symposium
Yeah.
is
Share that.
on May 15th at 1 o'clock Eastern time.
Okay.
Come to the Dream Symposium and tell us your dreams. You can do that too.
Yeah. And I'll put the links up in the show notes so you guys can get to that, because that I would imagine this conversation will open up that energy in the psyche. So I'll be interested to see what comes up for people.
See, this is how Indigenous people live. They listen every day to the dreams of the people in the village. And that's how they know what's going on. That's how their cosmology is developed. That is how even the most practical things of when to plant and hunt and all that are developed. That's when they know what danger is coming. It's like they listen to the dreams of the community. So we can get back to that. It's now we can create a global village here where we're really listening at a deep level to each other's messages that as they come through. So,
Oh my God, I love that. That's amazing.
yeah.
Well, I can't believe it's already been an hour. So crazy.
Yeah, that went quickly. That was fun.
Yeah. But before we go, any last thoughts, words of wisdom, any last comments you have about our topic today?
I guess my last thought might be, I don't know, to stay with it. Am I a noun or am I a verb? No, like allow yourself to be a verb. I think it felt to me in the dream that the verb was the more truth, the noun was the more limiting. So, but whatever it is just let yourself be this evolving person, this evolving identity. Just allow for real change and trust it. And if there's suffering involved, we'll love each other and have compassion for one another and support each other through it. Because clearly there probably is destined to be suffering involved in the change. It does never, nobody ever said change is easy. So, and some big changes need to be made. So we can do this. We got each other. And the universe has our backs. It's, it always intends for the good, and the dream always intends for your good. Even if it's telling you something like it's hard to hear or see or scary, it's always intending for the highest good. So trust in that, and love each other to pieces.
Beautiful. Tayria Ward, everybody. I love you so much. And I'm really happy to have you on our show. And there's more to come from Tayria for sure. And we'll be talking more next week, actually. I think it's next week and beyond. So I will get all of this information in the show notes. Everybody who's watching, thank you so much. Everybody who's listening in later, thank you so much. The books and things that Tayria recommended will be in here, as well as her links to all of her good stuff. And keep track of your dreams, you guys. And thank you so much, Tayria. Thank you for being here.
All of us are saying thank you to you, Lisa, for everything that you give with such abundance and such gracefulness and such power and beauty. So thank you, dear Lisa. We love you.
Thank you so much. I love you too. And bye to everybody out there. And we'll see you again soon.